Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. Today's episode is very interesting. So first, I have Ashley Cullins, who is the author of a new Scream book, Your Favorite Scary Movie. And then after that, Amar Karim joins me to do a remake of an episode that we did in the very first year of the podcast called The First Day of Autumn. And we reflect on, of course, the fall, the season, the spooky season. We talk about Scream. We go through a bunch of Scream questions that fans sent into us back in 2021. And like all of it was like, oh, what do you want to see in Scream 5? Or like, well, what do you expect Scream 5 to be better than 1 and 2? What do you want to see in Scream 5? So we did all of those same questions, but we just applied them to Scream 7, which is very fun and cool. Then me, Amar, and Anthony, we review The Conjuring Last Rites and also reflect on its huge, massive box office success. And then to close out the show, my friend Ashley joins me to do a little Taylor Swift segment covering Autumn and how it relates to Taylor Swift. So everybody, please enjoy this fall spectacular episode. I need to thank the producers and administrators of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. First, I need to thank TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work from the podcast. Also, I need to thank Ashley Summers, Mark Vieira, Sarah Campbell, and Sam Levy for helping me keep the podcast and Patreon community afloat. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Amar Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Garrison Nichols, Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Okay, so I may have considered myself a journalist once, okay? But today I'm sitting here with another code journalist or the real journalist, someone who we've all been reading recently, which is very fun. Everyone, please welcome Ashley Cullins. Hey, Ashley.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So first of all, you published a book called Your Favorite Scary Movie. It released August 19th. You're making movie fans read again, which we love.
I do. I really love that. There are two things that have been happening a lot, and I love both of them. One of them is people telling me that they're not big readers, but that this has made them want to start reading again. And the other end of it, which is, people who are super into reading who said, I liked these movies, but I wasn't like obsessed with them. However, this has made me rewatch all of them.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that.
So This isn't like something that we can just like let go a little bit. Like here, this book is a New York Times bestseller, a book about Scream that you wrote. Has that sunk in yet? Do you feel like a New York Times bestseller?
No. I mean, like, yeah, it's so exciting and it's so surreal. And I don't know when it's going to like fully sink in. I felt super obnoxious, like changing my Instagram profile, like, but I'm like, I need to put it in there. It's a thing.
Mhm.
So it's very cool.
Listen, you earned it. You own it. I think the coolest about your story is not the New York Times bestseller, but just the fact that Kevin Williamson seems to be so proud of your book and that he has been such a huge endorser of it. How does that make you feel?
It's unreal. Like, he was the one person who I truly did not want to tell this story without. And I am so fortunate that he was so generous with his time and he has been so supportive. And I obviously wanted to do a good job for myself. But the next most important thing to me was that, like, Kevin likes this book. The big takeaway for me is I've always loved this franchise, but I have such a deeper admiration for the amount of like blood, sweat, and tears that went into making them than I
Yeah.
did before.
Well, so I have to ask, the number one favorite thing you learned from writing this book?
I can't exactly pick one because they're all very different. Like,
Mhm.
loved the detail that Nev Campbell shared about having to spray down the wardrobe during filming the last sequence of the first movie with water to get into it because they needed continuity on the blood and it would literally dry stiff like cardboard. I just thought that was such a like a visceral detail.
Mhm.
And then I love Jack Quaid's playlist that he made to prep for Scream 5. Like, I think that is just so funny. And the fact that he put, regular Scream stuff, but also Monster Mash on
Mhm.
there is just like, and the whole point was to get into the character's head. So he's like creating layers in Richie through this playlist, which was wild. And then on like the, sort of nerdy filmmaking side of it, I really loved the part about the opening of Scream 3 where Sheila Waldron was talking about working with Wes Craven and how he explained to her that there's nothing scarier than a dolly into a closed door. Like that slow push in and you don't know what's on the other side and how that interplays with, how people process fear and what they're most afraid of and building that feeling up so that regardless of what's actually on the other side of the door, you've already gone to the scariest place in your own head. I thought that was really, really smart.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about the book, of course, but I also want to talk about you as a fan because, like, my podcast, my perspective is like, my background is in film criticism. So I used to be a film critic. I've always been a Scream fan, but my podcast kind of blends the two. So I want to talk about what you think of Scream so that people can kind of know who you are as they're, reading your book now or for years to come. So, Ashley, why don't you tell me what your Scream story is? What does Scream mean to you? And I know you go into this in the book, but, from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, it was the first non-kid movie
Mhm.
that I ever really loved. I hadn't really watched much horror prior to that because I was like a preteen when it came out. So I had seen it without the knowledge of my parents and was scared of clowns for a very long time because of it. So like I had seen some horror, but this was the first that I actually sat down and intentionally watched, and we owned it on VHS and I had it like basically fully memorized because it's how you get with things when you're a kid. If you love them, you just want to experience it over and over and over again. And for me, Scream was almost too scary in that it really plays into the fear of being a teenage girl home alone, especially with the opening sequence with Casey Becker, the first attack on Sydney when she's just home alone. So it played on a real fear I had in real life, but it took it to, the fantastical place with the costume. And also it was so funny. And all of the characters were so cool. And you wanted to just like hang out with them until, the end. And then you're like, I'm very glad I was not at this party. And it was also a whodunit, which I've always enjoyed. I love mysteries. I love the challenge of trying to figure it out. And I loved that I never saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that my friends over at the Happy Horror Time asked you what your two favorite sequels were, but I'm going to go a step further and I'm going to ask you to rank the franchise for me.
All of them?
All
Okay.
6.
And so I told the Happy Horror Time guys this too, that it is sort of in flux a bit
Mhm.
because number one, far and away my favorite. I don't think anything can touch it. Number two, I go back and forth between whether my second favorite is Scream 2 or Scream 6. And right after Scream 6 came out, and for probably the first year, I would have said Scream 6 very closely followed by Scream 2. And I do think that there was like a little bit of recency bias, which is just natural. Anytime something new in a franchise that you love comes out, you're like excited. And there are a lot of things that I really love about 6. I love the opening. I think that misdirect was so smart. I love the set pieces. I love that they managed to make like daily city life feel unsafe. And I'm still impressed by all of that. Scream 2, however, is just like a perfect movie. And so I think the more I continue to rewatch all of these, that it will probably, be cemented as 1, 2, 6 eventually. But at this particular moment in time, I'm still like pretty excited about what they did in 6. And then from there, it sort of very closely 5, 4, 3. Scream 3 is not my least favorite movie in the franchise. I just think it's the least Scream-y. So if I'm ranking them as Scream movies, it feels the least like Scream to me. And I think that is because of the absence of Kevin Williamson.
Yeah. Well, the absence of Kevin Williamson is something, it's interesting to me because like it's hard for people in 2025 to remember and recognize like how the discourse was for Scream fans, say, before Scream 4. Like, Scream 3 used to be really hated, and I think it's grown in reputation over time, and it is my favorite. That's kind of like my claim to fame is, like, I have tried to passionately defend Scream 3 as a legitimate entry in the franchise and, like, really show respect to Sydney's character arc, which I think is really beautiful.
3 is a super fun movie. Parker Posey is a genius,
Yeah.
and I love that it sort of skewered Hollywood the way that it did. And like you just said, the thing about Scream is talk to 10 fans and you might get 10 different rankings. Like there are no bad Scream movies, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, can I ask, so do you consider Scream to be your favorite movie in your top 10 favorite movies? What's your point of view?
Yeah, yes.
Specifically.
So it's a hard question to answer because it came at a time in my life when I feel like, and I've said this before, like you never love things you meet at other points in your life the way you love things as a teenager. So the fact that I loved Scream back then and I still enjoy it as an adult, yes, it's my favorite movie. I don't think anything is going to really unseat it because there are a lot of other movies that I, really loved at that period of my life that I grew out of. And that didn't happen with this. And probably because it was too old for me to begin with.
So, Ashley, I really want to go through my speed round questions with you. I'm curious to see your answers to this. Okay. So, Sydney or Gail or Ty?
This is unfair. I feel like as a journalist, I'm supposed to say Gail, but if Sydney weren't a compelling character, I wouldn't care about this franchise.
Yeah.
So Sydney.
Okay. Sam or Tara?
Sam.
Okay. Dewey or Chad?
Rude. Dewey. Sorry, Mason. Dewey.
Favorite movie buff across the franchise?
It's hard because Mindy doesn't exist without Randy, and Jamie Kennedy is so good. But Jasmine is just so fun to watch. So I'm going to have to go with Mindy.
Well, that's fun because, she doesn't get picked often for this question. So I like the variety here. So very cool. Who is your favorite killer?
I love Mrs. Loomis because I feel like, despite the fact that Billy is probably her fault, it's very relatable. And the fact that they strategically hid her from the Woodsboro residence and she posed as another character hiding in plain sight the whole time. I just love that.
As a journalist. So there you go.
Yeah, and Debbie Salt was the worst.
It goes deep, right? So, oh my gosh. Favorite opening and favorite finale across the franchise?
I feel like everything is playing for second for the original opening sequence. I have to say that the opening of Scream 2, I think about that more than probably any other moment in any other movie. Like that lives rent free in my head, especially when I go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
And then ending?
Yeah. Like favorite finale, like killer reveal, final battle.
Gosh, it's hard. Again, Billy and Stu, that whole thing is just, they're unhinged when the mask comes off figuratively and literally is just excellent. For atmosphere, I give points to 6 because having the killer reveal play out in essentially a giant Scream museum was just wild.
Do you have a favorite scene?
I love the squad car scene in Scream 2. the tension in that where they're like trying to crawl out the window and then he, gets her down the street. I love the scenes with Jennifer Jolie and Gail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that pairing was just so, so fun for me. The Stabathon in the barn was
I love that. Oh my gosh.
just
yeah.
like, I grew up in the Midwest. Like red solo cup parties in the middle of nowhere is
Mhm.
like part of my teenagedom. So I dug the Stabathon in the barn. I love the bodega scene in 6. It reminds me of Jurassic Park with the raptors. I have favorite scenes in like so many favorite scenes in all of the movies. They're just fun.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my last question here is what is your favorite thing about Scream?
That even though it is a slasher and a lot of people die, it manages to be fun to watch. They do such a good job creating character and creating atmosphere that I feel like, at least for me, I'm rooting for these people. And it's sad when Ghostface gets somebody. And a lot of the death scenes, I like have to avert my eyes because, oh my God. But they're also funny and mysterious, and it gives you a break from being just scared. And so it's like a really well-rounded entertainment experience. And I think that makes them all just like endlessly rewatchable.
So let's talk about the book. I want to talk to you about the process of writing it because it fascinates me. How did you manage to find this opportunity and how did you know you wanted to do it? And
the too long, don't listen to me version is I'm the luckiest person on the planet. But the longer story starts when I was at Hollywood Reporter. I did an oral history of the first movie for the 25th anniversary. And I was the senior business editor at THR. So I had a very like serious job and I am a ridiculous person. So I saw that the anniversary was coming up. I didn't usually pitch things too far outside of my lane, but I really wanted to do something. And it ended up being like the most wonderful couple of months. I think there were like 13 people who participated, and I ended up splitting it into 2 pieces because I was really taken aback by how people talked about Wes Craven. And so I wanted to do the oral history for the 25th anniversary, but then also do a piece looking at Wes Craven and his legacy. And so I did it. It was great. I was really happy with it. And then I kind of forgot about it and went back to my, quote unquote day job. And then a few months later, I got an email out of nowhere from a literary agent who basically said that he wants there to be a book about Scream and I should do it. And I was extremely pregnant with my younger son at the time, but it was a very good email and he was even more convincing on Zoom. And so John, my agent, convinced me to take a shot at this. And I'd always wanted to write a book. But anytime you do something you've never done before, it's really, really scary, especially if you are a creative person, like many people I know who like struggles with imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to be doing this? Like, it was a lot of pressure and it was very scary, but he convinced me and I did the proposal while I was on maternity leave from THR. And then the bulk of the work on the book I actually did while fully employed. So I would just work in interviews with people. And then, fortunately / unfortunately, like in hindsight, I say fortunately, at the time I was not happy about it. I was laid off 3 months.
So sorry.
Yeah, I was laid off 3 months before my manuscript was due. So you never want to be in that situation, especially when it was a week shy of my 8-year anniversary at Hollywood Reporter. So I felt very untethered, but at the same time, it gave me time to focus that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that was, in hindsight, a very fortunate thing because everything turned out okay.
First of all, I'm really sorry. How was your emotional state while you were doing all this? Were you aware of everything as it was happening as a Scream fan? Like, this is so fun. Like,
yeah, it was a roller coaster. Everyone was so kind and so friendly. And when I tell you, I think it ended up being 85 people and there was not a single asshole in the bunch. Like, that blows me away because pick any 85 people and you're going to run into a few who are unpleasant. And so the fact that people were just so awesome made it truly enjoyable. And then, getting to spend 3 years of my life, like basically really digging into why I love something that I love was a lot of work. and there was a lot of stress, and I am still tired, but it was great. It's like, you know, that stupid cliche that like, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Like, that's not true.
It's not.
It's just that it makes it more worth it.
Well, so with all that being said, why was it important to you to write this book besides the opportunity?
It was just such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
There was no part of me that even hesitated, and I didn't think about it this way until much, much later. Actually, like when Kevin was telling me how one of the reasons why he decided to come be back in the fold for Scream 5 was that one of his friends was like, do you really just want to be a guy who shows up with a ticket? And at that point, I realized I was like, yeah, like I absolutely needed to do this because this is the kind of thing that if like I would have been jealous, like so jealous if it weren't me.
Right.
Right. And so like and there aren't a whole lot of movies or TV series or anything that I would feel that way about, you know?
So I have some specific questions about the book now that we're kind of here. So in terms of, this is a very writerly question. How did you balance using quotes from people versus editorializing versus painting a picture of everything that you've learned and combining, you know, but what you've been told into a story? Like, how did you work that balance? Because there's a lot of quotes in here, but at the same time, I never felt like I was reading a transcript. So what would you say to that?
That makes me very happy to hear. I've worked in every format. I started my career in TV news, daily print newspaper, monthly magazine, website. It's approach it the same way through all of those. And I didn't know if it was going to work with a book, but I leaned in and it did. I always start with the best parts of my interviews. I pick out quotes that are either moving or funny or interesting or important. And then I build out the structure, like the overall big picture narrative. And from there, then I go in and I pick which things, okay, I really liked this idea, but maybe I could say that better myself, or this needs some extra context, or, you know, these two things are so close to being related, but I'm going to have to provide a lot of connective tissue to make this flow from one to the other. And my ridiculously cheesy analogy I made at some point was that it was like sculpture. Like I started with the raw materials and I just chipped away at it until I saw what it was. And then I just went in and made it all polished and shiny and pretty. And that's how I feel. Like I feel like the people I talk to are the story. And it's just my job to help make that an easy read, if that makes sense.
Covering 6 movies over 30 years is not a small task. Like, I'm actually surprised that you were able to boil everything down so concisely into a very readable book. Like I actually read it in one sitting over maybe, a couple of hours. It's very digestible.
Thank you. That is a huge compliment.
So, and you spoke to so many people, as you referenced, 85, including Courtney Cox. And I think it's so cool that you got her because she does not love to do interviews from what I gather. Like she didn't do like the certain documentaries for Scream back when they were making them for Scream 4 or whatever, but she'll do them, when the studio has her or whatever. But so I was really happy to see that she was included in your book. How did you approach your chapters on 2, 3, and 4 versus 5 and 6, considering everything right now is so fresh?
Everything except 7, I treated basically the same. I leaned into what each individual person felt was most important. I'm just like, I'm going to approach this from a place of curiosity because I don't know what I don't know. And yes, I've got a list of, things I want to talk to each person about, but I'm going to really let them steer the conversation. And so I treated all of the first 6 completed movies the same way. 7 was obviously different. And I made a decision pretty early on that I wasn't going to be like chasing updates until the very last minute because I wanted it to tell a story. And so I'm like, I have to be fine with, things being announced before the book comes out that I find out about after I've submitted, my final draft. And I just have to be okay with that because I wanted it to be a complete story. And at the same time, I was very, very, very cognizant of avoiding anything that could even potentially be interpreted as a spoiler because that's just not how I roll.
I think that what you were able to include about 7 was wonderful, and it sets 7 up in a great way. And I think a wonderful thing about the book right now is it's like an appetizer. Getting to hear from Nev and Kevin specifically talk about Scream 7, especially everything that Nev said. What she says about approaching the character, like that's what we want to hear. That's what Scream fans have been dying to hear.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like I think people are going to love it. And I am so happy that Nev is back not only as Sydney, but also as a producer because
Mhm.
she, Kevin knows this franchise better than anybody, but she's like right there with him. And so to have Kevin Williamson directing and Nevon as, the star and the producer and have, them being the ones that are, taking Guy Busick's story and really making it a Sydney story, which we haven't gotten for a long time, is
Yeah.
just great.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I would say people in my orbit are most excited about, and including me myself, is the fact that Sydney gets to be the main character again. That it just feels like we're coming home in a respect. The last thing I want to ask you about is the fact that you got to go to the Scream 7 set. What was that? I can't even just saying the words to you, it's just like making me smile. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine being you getting to go and visit the Scream 7 set. What was that like?
It was cool. Like, that probably sounds so dumb, but you hear people talk about working on these movies and you, especially like night shoots,
Mm-hmm.
and you imagine what it's like. And then you step foot on set and it is just so far beyond. And I was there for night shoots. The energy was incredible and everybody was so welcoming. And I never really felt like people were like, oh, journalists better be, don't be fun or interesting. Press is here. Like, nobody treated me like that, which is an occupational hazard, and I would understand if they did. But the atmosphere, I imagine, is probably a lot like what Wes Craven's sets felt like. Yes, it's work. Yes, they're tired because it's 4:00 in the morning, but everybody was just happy and
Yeah.
it was cool. And getting to see Kevin and Nev actually like interact, like him directing her and then them watching the monitors back together, it was surreal. And I'm so glad I was able to experience that.
So you didn't walk into set with a camera in your purse like Gail Weathers in Scream 3 going to stop
Well, I
you.
had
I'm
a camera.
teasing.
I was allowed to take pictures. People were leaking them the night before the book came out and stressing me out. I only put 2 in the book because I was, again, very conscious of not wanting to like spoil anything. And there were a lot of pictures that I took that at the time I didn't realize would be spoilery.
Right. Well, and they're pictures of Sidney Prescott's house. So are you saying you got to walk in Sidney Prescott's house?
I'm saying I walked into that house.
Oh my God, so cool. Okay, fair enough. But you walked into this house that I'm speculating is Sidney Prescott's house. So cool. Oh my God. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for writing the book. Is there anything you would like to close on in terms of what you want people to know about your work here?
Honestly, I wrote this in the acknowledgments and I truly mean it. And I hope people believe me when I say that this franchise would not be what it is without the fans. Like, the people who love Scream have been fueling this thing for almost 30 years. And these movies would not still be happening were it not for that support. And I'm just, I am a fan myself. So to love something that so many people also love is
Mhm.
just incredible. And the fact that like it's managed to be a vibrant, good franchise for this long is like kind of a miracle in Hollywood. And I think that it's because of the just group of brilliant, talented, wonderful people who made these movies, but also because of the fandom.
Yeah. I have a non-Scream question for you. I'm also a huge Swiftie. So what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
It's the vigilante shit. The cat eye sharp enough to kill a man song is what I almost just called it because I couldn't think of the name. I love that song.
That is excellent. Such a curveball, but it makes sense. And Ashley, tell everybody where they can find you online.
I exist on most of the platforms. Instagram is the only one that I use regularly. I'm on Threads and I think Blue Sky and LinkedIn and TikTok and still have a Twitter account, but Instagram is the one that I actually put time into.
All right, well, Ashley, thank you so much. It was wonderful to hang out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. I am joined by the miraculous Amar Karim. Hey, Amar.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How about you?
Yeah, good. Like usual, every time we're recording, I'm hyped up, so.
Ryan and Amar, this entity that you're listening to right here, it really is the OG. We are throwing it back to the very beginning of the podcast with today's episode. So, Amar, why don't you tell everybody what is one of your favorite or most nostalgic episodes ever of the podcast?
Obviously, there's some great ones, but one that kind of goes under the radar was our autumn episode. Oh, I remember looking out into the garden. There was this tree and blah, blah, blah. And I just felt that we just got on, wasn't really pre-planned. It was just in the moment. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so Amar and I did this episode. It was the 15th episode of the podcast back in 2021. And it was called The First Day of Autumn. And it was the first time, like with the podcast, that I had gotten on here with somebody and we just kind of talked and didn't have like a pre-planned agenda, if that makes sense. And it just so happened that it was coinciding with the first kind of burst of fall/autumn. And I was really feeling the vibes. Like the trees were changing colors. There was a feeling in the air. And I love fall. It's one of my favorite seasons. So Amar and I got on, and we were talking about that, and we talked about the reviews for Halloween Kills were coming out at the time. And we were surprised because the reviews weren't so good for Halloween Kills, which in retrospect, it's so funny to listen back to that. Amar and I here, we are going to be remaking that episode today. So this is like, we made this First Day of Autumn episode before Scream 5. And today we are going to be doing the First Day of Autumn for 2025 before Scream 7. So Amar, welcome to the remake of The First Day of Autumn. In that episode, we actually had questions sent into us by fans of the podcast. So the podcast was in its baby infant stages back then. That it's crazy to me to even put myself into the mindset of what was Scream with Ryan C. Showers like when we were only 15 episodes in. Because now it's like we do 15 episodes a month. I'm just teasing, not really, but kind of. And it's like it was just such a different world back then, before a lot of cynical stuff that happened and before a lot of dark stuff happened. And like, I guess it's like anything. You start out with something and it's so pure, and you have the best intentions and you have optimism, and you're fearless, to bring Taylor Swift into it, and then eventually you become Red, which is funny because we're going from Fearless, which is like summer and golden, to Red, which is my favorite album, and fall. So
I love how you always manage to incorporate something to do with Taylor Swift into this now, like every episode. And I mean, half the time I don't know what he's talking about, but I will.
Well, do you know that Taylor Swift, there is like a fall component to Taylor Swift? Like there are certain albums that you listen to in the fall that have fall vibes based off of like the specific songs, like the music videos, what the imagery is, or just like within the songs themselves, like within the lyrics. So there's a Taylor aspect to Autumn, and Ashley and I will be discussing this very briefly at the end of the show. We're going to go through questions sent in by fans of Scream with Ryan C. Showers back from 2021, and basically we're going to answer them again because I've listened to the episode, so I want to know if our answers are the same. And, it's fun because back then we had gone 11 years without seeing a Scream movie. And so we were approaching Scream 5 and we were so excited for it. It was just like, it was something we were salivating for. And like in some ways, Scream 7 is like a redux. It's like doing Scream 5 all over again because it's going back to Sydney. So it's kind of like we can answer all these same questions as applied to Scream 7. So, and not only, Amar, do you remember you kind of turned the tables on me and you're like, well, Ryan, I have questions for you.
Yeah, I remember that very well. I don't remember the questions now when I think about the original episode or what I said, but I remember saying, well, you know what, Ryan, let me ask you some of these questions. So, yeah.
So we're going to hit those questions as well.
Okay.
And then after that, Amar and I are going to talk about the Conjuring Last Rites movie that just came out in September. It had a massive box office. So we're going to review that and talk about the box office implications for that. So there's a lot that Amar and I are going to cover here. But before we do anything, before we really commence with the remake, Amar, I have to ask you, what have you had it with recently?
Right. Okay. The first thing I've had it with is critics in general. And what I mean by that is how they just moan about everything or degrade everything. Or, for example, I've seen a review about, say, Jurassic World. Now, I know it's not like the best film, but when they go in and say it's just about dinosaurs eating people, I'm like, well, duh. That's basically what we want from a film like that. Or they complain about something with, I don't know, John Wick, what's his name, Keanu Reeves, or, an actor that they say, well, he's not got a lot of expressions or the acting's not fantastic. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's not what we go to see John Wick for. So I find that, and a lot of people are doing it on Letterboxd as well, actually. Some people that I follow, some that I always look at for reviews. And I just feel like when people go into a film, you have to have a certain mindset with that film. You can't go into, I don't know, an Encanto expecting it to be a Batman Begins sort of thing, right? Because it's just not going to be that way. And I find that when I look at critics complaining about a film, I'm always wondering, what did you expect? I can train my brain to say, right, this is the type of film you're going to watch. This is what to expect from it. And 9 times out of 10, I will enjoy it. It might be a poor film, but I'll still be able to take some of it that away from it that's quite good. And I feel like most people can't do that.
Well, so I hear what you're saying, and I think what Amar is kind of getting at is like letterbox culture. Letterbox culture is annoying. Sometimes I feel like people treat films like they're leaving Yelp reviews, and so you get random things that people are upset about, or and like the blurb is dumb. So I get that. For me, Amar, I see things the opposite way, where I see people being so overly optimistic about everything. Like we have to accept everything, and we can't criticize anything. We can't think about anything in a smart way. And that's more of my beef is like, and like what you're saying. So are you saying that like I should accept all of Scream 6's flaws, or as it says in Ashley Collins's book, like all of the moments of ham sandwich, just because, or
No, not necessarily. Like with you, especially with Scream 6, it's flawed all over, right? I get that. But you will still at least say, well, look, the Gale chase scene is done well. So at least you're going into it thinking, well, I don't like this film. However, I can take things from it that I can see that is an improvement or is a good part of that film, which I find people don't do that at all.
Well, so can I just, going back to what you said just like 2 minutes ago, you said something to the effect of like, you should know what you're signing up for, what you're getting into. You should have your expectations. What should be our expectations for a Scream movie? Should we be expecting the Scream 1, 2, and 3 version of the world where, Wes Craven made really dense movies with a great script and really smart themes and performances and deep characters? Or should we be expecting just a brainless thrill ride with logic loopholes like we have in Scream 6? Like, that's my beef is like, yes, I think that what your philosophy and my philosophy are in sync. Like, I like Jurassic World with Scarlett Johansson. I actually thought I had a fun time. I vibed with it for the reasons that you said. I didn't go in expecting it to be Schindler's List. Okay. But with Scream, I think it's reasonable to go in and expect that things make sense and that there are good performances and that it should be that there should be elements of it that are challenging and innovative and emotional and well made as a movie.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you 100%.
All right. So can I tell you what I've had it with?
Yes, please.
The thing that I've had it most with this week is, so here's the thing. Like, I've had it with people who use this outdated and frankly out of touch argument, and I've seen like it doesn't crop up often because like I think that Scream 3 and 4 have been reevaluated from the time that they were released, and because both movies were somewhat controversial upon their release. With a lot of people think that Scream 3 was a huge disappointment, a huge betrayal, that Scream 4 didn't hit at the time, and that both of them are very flawed sequels. And then Scream 5 and 6 came along, and it was just like, oh, we're living in Candyland again. Everything is seen through rose-colored glasses. 5 and 6 could do no wrong. They were the thing that really brought Scream back. Oh, the cast, they had so much fun making them. And this idea that Scream 3 and Scream 4 are still maligned, that there's still this cruel perspective about Scream 3 and 4, that they should still be demeaned and degraded as, problematic for the way that they were made, or that there's too much comedy and not enough this, and that there's still the criticisms of 3 you would have heard of back in like 2008 and 2009 about Scream 3. Like, people are still acting as though that's the reality of the world we live in today, and that's how the world understands Scream 3. I don't believe that's the case. And in fact, it offends me that people would do that and not take into context everything about Scream 3 over the last 10 years of how people have revisited that movie, and Scream 4, how people have revisited the movie, the themes, and understood it in a deeper way, understood Wes's direction, understood the Sidney Prescott arc, understood the Maureen Prescott story, understood the trilogy arc of it, and instead focus on really silly and really stupid, criticisms of the movie. I don't care if you like Scream 3, but I expect you to respect it and respect the history that has happened over the past 5 to 10 years, where people have looked at it again through the Me Too lens and looked at it again as kind of an epic, high budget studio movie that Wes Craven made that has a very dense story, great acting, and, does different things with the genre. Like, people have reevaluated the movie.
I've seen the comments to the effect of, actually, Scream 3 is not as bad as I remember, or actually, I've seen this, I understand why this story goes this way. But I am finding a shift in tone, for Scream 3 especially, that people are coming round to it now and thinking, actually, this is a perfect trilogy.
And that's what I'm saying. I think like in the past 10 years, people have come around to it. It's not like back in like before Scream 4 and then like right after Scream 4, people thought Scream 3 was the worst thing that ever happened in the world. And since then, whether it was Me Too, whether it was the build up to Scream 5 and living through Scream 6, and getting those two movies, people have reevaluated and reexamined it. And even through this podcast, like, people have looked at Scream 3 and thought, oh, it's not as bad. It's actually, I understand it now. And for people in today's world to act as though Scream 1 and 2 were great, Scream 3 and 4 suck, and Scream 5 and 6, they are the movies that Scream 3 and Scream 4 never were, that they are more legitimate entries to the franchise than 3 and 4, I think is a very outdated, out of touch take. I think it's not where the fandom is. Like, to act as though we're still living in that time, it just feels like, it feels dishonest. It feels like we're being pushed a narrative. It's almost like when Disney came out and they made these new Star Wars movies, and like they're the Rey trilogy, right? And they kind of pushed aside the original trilogy, or even like especially the prequel trilogy, and acted as though they were not as legitimate as their movies. That's what it almost feels like to me when people talk about 5 and 6, like because like sometimes I get this, and that's why I'm saying this is like, every once in a while I'll get like some annoying like Quentin Tarantino film bro come into my mentions and be like, 5 and 6 were objectively better than 3 and 4. I think treating Scream 3 the same way we treated it 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago is just unfair and lacking the context of the reevaluation by the fans, and like, just out of touch with Scream fans. Like, there's a reason why Scream fans are so excited for Scream 7. There are a lot of people who love Scream 5 and 6 as their own entities, as a new part of the franchise, but lacking the context of Scream 3 and how people see Scream 3, I think that hurts the overall historical depiction of the Scream franchise. All right, well, let's talk about fall and autumn. So again, this episode that we recorded back, it was episode 15, okay? I listened back to it, and I remember Albert saying there was audio issues with this, and I listened back, and my microphone was really fucking bad. I mean, I'm embarrassed, so that's kind of why we're doing this, and like, it's fun because you can kind of when listening to old episodes like this, it is like a time machine. It is like going back to the past and putting yourself into something that's so vastly different from the reality of today, where, I have a more professional show, and it's just, I don't know. So it made me almost like so embarrassed. Like, I want to go back and like redo them as like a Ryan's version. So, Taylor Swift re-released, 4 of her first 6 albums, and she called them Taylor's version. I kind of want to go back and re-release some episodes that I did back then, but I want to do them at the quality that I have today. And I think that we're going to do that. It's going to be Ryan's version of certain episodes. What do you think, Amar?
Well, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
The thing is, I haven't listened to the episode in a while, but I speak about that one fondly because of how much fun we had doing it and how it wasn't scripted in any way, So it brings back good memories. It was a good time, and we were, like you said, fresh into it. I don't know if it was my second or maybe third episode that I'd done, maybe second. But, why not? Go ahead and do it.
Let's talk about fall and autumn. What is fall like for you in the UK? What do you enjoy about the season?
Well, though I keep saying that I love summer, and it's true, when the weather changes, it changes the vibe in the UK. And for the first few days, it's fantastic. You see, obviously, all the leaves falling and changing. And I told you this last time, it took me so many years to understand why fall is called fall in America, because I thought it was autumn everywhere. And I was like, oh, it makes sense now. But yeah, so there's a massive change. And even in the supermarkets, you get to see all the Halloween trimmings and decorations and stuff coming out, and you can see the vibe changing, and school restarts and kids are everywhere. And there's, you can see your breath in the air, and hats are coming out. And there is a vibe to it. It's not as huge in the UK, and when we get to Halloween, I guess, as it is in America. And we said this, I'm sure, on the last episode, because it's becoming like that now, though, almost like a religious thing in the UK, almost. Because beforehand, you could only get Halloween stuff around about the second week of October, maybe the first. Now it's like the summer's not even over, and Halloween trimmings are out, and ghouls are out. And now, this year especially, Scream merchandise is everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I lapped it up straight away.
Well, so, it's funny because like what I hear from that is that the American capitalism is starting to eat alive the British culture as it pertains to things like this.
Well, I think it's because of social media. The culture is definitely, bleeding its way into the UK just because of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And I think the UK has realized, well, all these kids, they love all this stuff. So why not cash in on it?
Well, and I think like for me, so when all the Halloween stuff starts to come out, and like when Spirit Halloween comes on the scene, and like, you know, Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, it starts even like for the fall stuff in August. Like it starts like Halloween just starts coming out, and it's fun because like, you know, for me in America, I love going from fall to winter, winter to spring, maybe, you know, I don't, because like, so here's the thing how it goes. Like I really enjoy a season for what it is, and then by the time like after 3 months of heat in the summer, I am so desperately ready for fall. You know, when I'm after going through winter, you know, I enjoy winter for the first half, and then the second half it starts to get trying. And so whenever spring comes, I'm happy. So with fall, it's times 10 because horror and like, you know, very nostalgic TV shows and movies are tied to the fall season for us. And because Halloween is so commercialized, we really get people like me and you, people within the Patreon, our love for horror and our love for Scream and our love for the Halloween movie, like, you know, they kind of become validated by the culture and by the world at this time because of just the association with horror movies and Halloween.
Yeah, you know, that part of it has been there since childhood. When I was even like 6 or 7, and I remember it would be October, even the beginning of October, and we would look for, I mean, it so happens that I love horror films, but me and my siblings, my younger 2 siblings, my brother and my sister, we would always check the television. Right, something must be on, and every single day in October, especially the last 2 weeks, there was always something on. You'd catch Halloween, or you'd catch a Silver Bullet or a Stephen King film. So that definitely is been in our culture in the UK from the early 80s. Well, since I was born, from what I remember. So yeah, that part of it has always been here. But like you said, you know, the gifts or the trimmings or the masks or anything, it only used to be October. But now, like you said, maybe not so early as July, but we definitely get it in the last 2 weeks of August. And I definitely love the shift in seasons as well. Mm-hmm. But the problem the UK has that America doesn't seem to have is that you at least get 3 months of consistent weather for each season. Yeah. We don't. Our summer is 3 days of heat, 3 days of rain. So no wonder we're always ill.
We have an early fall this year. So like the past couple of years, it's been very warm through even October. So it's almost like summer has had an extra month, which I hate. I despise it. But I came home from vacation and it was like September 1st and it was chilly. There was a chill in the air. The leaves have already started changing. So like, you know, we have fall foliage where I live. So I'm like in my happy place. Also, here's the thing about like fall is like it's the start of all the holiday seasons. So I love the holidays. I don't just love Halloween. I love Thanksgiving. I love Christmas. I love the decorations. I love being able to decorate the house and the lights. It's just I love the nostalgia. I love the coziness. I love you know, also getting to decorate for holidays and stuff. It feels fun. It feels fresh. It feels like we're beginning again. It feels like some of my favorite things to do in the fall are like so you know, I love to just like after my boyfriend leaves for work and it's still dark outside, I like to turn on like my Halloween lights and just sit in my living room, drink my coffee, start my day. It just feels and plus like with you know the windows open and the air blowing into the house, it just feels like I feel like this is like I feel like I'm in a Hallmark movie, and that's what I think like the vibe of fall really is.
Yeah, then that I'm great that you have that. I don't have that here. I mean, to be honest with you, maybe I've just outgrown it or I'm too busy, but when I was younger, I used to love it, you know, trimmings and decorations and putting stuff up and switching from Halloween to Christmas. And we have bonfire night in between when you guys have Thanksgiving. We have Guy Fawkes night and the fireworks and, you know, building bonfires and 5th of November and all of that. It's huge. It's very nostalgic for me. And it's my sister's birthday also. Now, as I've got older, maybe, I don't know, maybe Ryan, when I'm about 60, what if I'm a grumpy old man?
So like in the UK, you know, another thing about the fall that I think people like is the culture literally does shift, right? We have football. You know, football is a huge American thing. And like, it's, you know, for Americans, especially like in the Northeast, right, we are used to going to like different football games where, you know, you're wearing your summer clothes and then like your somewhat fall clothes and then your really fall clothes where you're all bundled up in like hats and scarves. So there's something about that. Like there's haunted houses that we go to. There's fall activities. There's like pumpkin patches. There's little fall festivals. Like we love this shit. Americans get off on this shit.
Well, like I said, in the UK, that's not so big. But now, like, pumpkin trails and people turning up and all that kind of stuff, that is becoming quite big.
So there are these activities throughout fall I love to do, and it's just like haunted houses. I love going to haunted houses. There were times that Brent, and he's not like a horror movie person, Brent and I, we went to at least 4 haunted houses in 1 month over like the Halloween season, and it's just it's fun to go to. It's fun to see the decorations. It's fun to kind of be in an atmosphere that feels like horror, especially for people who love horror movies like we do. So
how far is the furthest haunted house that you went to?
OMG. So where I live in Pennsylvania, there are local haunted houses. Like, so there are probably a good like handful, maybe like 3 or 4 haunted attractions within, I would say, half hour. And then like there are so in Pennsylvania, there is like a big haunted attraction called the Bates Motel. And it's in Philadelphia. So it's about 3 hours from me. I've gone to that. I've thought it was really high quality and great. And when you go to the Bates Motel, there are like, say, 2 haunted houses and a haunted hayride. So you can make a whole night of it. There's something in, I don't know if people have ever heard of Lancaster County, PA, but that's where kind of like PA's Amish live.
Mhm.
And ironically, there are 2 big haunted attractions there where, like the Bates Motel, you go, there are 2 or 3 buildings. There's a haunted hayride and there's like shops and stuff. So there's 2 of them there. There's one called Jason's Woods. And there's one called Field of Screams. And I've been going to them for years. So it's fun because like Brett and I had this routine where we would go to, Jason's Woods and Field of Screams. Ironically, the same weekend as like Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, we started this tradition. It was like we saw Halloween Kills on Thursday night. Then we would go to Lancaster, spend the weekend, go to one night, the other the next night. And so there's something very nostalgic about that for me. I kind of missed that.
Well, okay, so in Leeds, where I live, we have a few, but they're not huge. They're just small and they're for kids, maybe not so for adults. So my youngest son turned 7 on the 28th of October. So for his birthday, I'm taking him and I'm still pondering on whether I should go. And it's only a 45-minute drive away. It's in Manchester. And I thought I should take them. And I've told the eldest 2 of the 3 young boys. I know 5 kids. I have to remember what order they're in, right? So they really want to go. But my youngest one absolutely hates horror. He hates anything to do with horror films. If I put the trailer on for Scream and he walks in the room, he runs out. So I'm like,
wow.
What better way to introduce horror by taking him to a haunted house? But apparently it's excellent. But I just don't know if I'm going to traumatize him or not. But I'm definitely going to go.
You will have so much fun just being in the culture with the smoke machines and just the haunted decorations. It's so much fun for people who love scary movies.
Yeah. And my 11 and 9-year-old, they've seen the first 2 Screams with me and they love it. But this young one, I mean, I even said to him, I said, I was your age when I first watched Halloween, and he just ran out of the room. I said, why didn't say anything? So we like, again, everything that America is doing, the UK isn't doing it as grand as that, but we're catching on.
Well, so, I'm going to be controversial. My favorite month isn't even October. My favorite month is actually November. I don't know why. It's like, I feel like it's like the peak of coziness. Like things are very cold at this point. We are in fall. The leaves are starting to change, if not falling off of the trees. And like, I don't know. It's just like, it's in between. It's cushioned between Halloween and Christmas. So you kind of get the best of both cultures, and you get Thanksgiving in the middle of it. And it's just good movie watching weather. It's scarf weather. And like, for instance, like, last year it was Wicked. So I'm going to be so insufferable this year for fall. Because imagine this. In the next 2 months, we're going to be getting, Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl. We're going to be getting the Scream 7 trailer, and we're going to be getting Wicked Part 2. Everybody I know is going to block me.
Well, that will never happen from me, even though I might be like rolling my eyes. But then my daughter is, even I'm looking forward to Wicked Part 2. So I just really want to see where it goes. But, November is good, even in the UK. It's chilly, but it's not like, in fact, believe it or not, when I was younger, December was the coldest month, and I think, I don't know, global warming or a shift in just the seasons, but January is ice cold in the UK, like literal ice on the floor. Don't want to go outside. But I get what you mean about November. I think for me, though, like I said, we have Guy Fawkes Night, which is bonfire night, and it's my sister's birthday, so it's very nostalgic. We would just get fireworks and keep warm around bonfires, and there's just bonfires in every park. Obviously guided ones, so there's no actual fires. But it was surprising to know that November is your favorite month. Do you know what my favorite month is?
Probably July.
It is July. It's July.
Why?
Because it's not super hot like August can get, but it's still t-shirt weather. And it's just, I mean, when the sun decides to show up, like when I go abroad, July is perfect. August just too hot. Like when I went to, August is ridiculous in Europe.
July is pretty hot here in America. It's the humidity in July. Like, again, I'm on board May. I'm on board June. By July and August, I'm done with the heat. I'm done with the humidity. So you should move to America and enjoy July.
I would love it.
All right. So, Amar, thank you for helping me remake our autumn discussion. I hope people go out and have a great fall. I mean, this episode is airing not the day of the first day of autumn, but it's going to be airing just shortly after. So I hope everyone has a great autumn season. I hope everyone takes very awesome pictures, share them with me. I love seeing fall foliage. I mean, it's kind of like a sickness, right? To be like so obsessed with just the color of the leaves, but I am. So please share.
Well, when you look at pictures or some stuff that photographers take, and autumn is always the best looking month. I must, followed by winter. How ironic, right? So
exactly. See, my seasons. We are proving you wrong, Amar.
yeah.
All right. So, Amar, we're going to go through questions we addressed on episode 15 here again today. So back then, we were looking forward to Scream 5. We hadn't had a trailer for Scream 5. Can you believe that? Can you believe that we did this episode first when there was no trailer for Scream 5, when we hadn't even seen what Sam Carpenter looked like? And now here we are, and we're going into Scream 7. That's so crazy.
It is crazy. One time I'm impressed by it, and then on the other hand, I'm like, wow, how much time has gone by? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Do you remember? So back like with the Scream 5 trailer, I saw the trailer. Someone sent me like a video, like they took a video with their phone of like the Scream 5 trailer, and it wasn't even in English, but it was only the second half of Scream 5. So I remember it started with Sam saying something like she was at Martha Meeks' house, and she said something like, "Oh, we're all suspects" or something, and then we saw the ending, and we saw like it was I'm pretty sure it was in Spanish because it said like, "Hello, Sydney, it's an honor" in Spanish. So it's just crazy to me. That was the first thing I ever saw of Scream 5, was someone's handheld cell phone version of the trailer.
Yeah. No, I remember I waited. I wanted to see it in good quality. To be honest with you, Ryan, except for the first film, every single trailer has got me excited. It's weird. Because obviously the first film I never saw the trailer. I just went straight into the film. But I think with everyone, I've always thought the excitement is just increasing. But that just goes to show my love for the franchise, I think.
I agree. And it's good to be excited. It's good to be not curmudgeon, like you said earlier with your I've had it. So, okay, back in 2021, fans of the podcast sent in these questions for Amar and I to answer on this episode. So Amar and I are going to take those questions back from then and answer them in today's world as we're approaching Scream 7. So, okay, the first question that was sent in was, what is your favorite scary movie outside of Scream?
Oh, okay, I'm gonna go with The Conjuring 2.
Really?
Yeah, I thought about this quite a lot recently, and it wouldn't be. I mean, obviously there's the I Know What You Did Last Summer and a few other slashes and Halloween, but you and I have been talking about it, and I really think that The Conjuring 2 is one of those films that I just enjoy time and time again. This answer might change next week, but right now, especially with the vibes of the new film, I'm gonna go with The Conjuring 2, closely followed by maybe Halloween. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, mine is obviously H2O and Halloween. Because it's no secret that I'm a Halloween fan. So I'm going to go Halloween. It's funny, whenever I answered this question back then, it's funny how much you and I change and don't change, because the show itself, I pretty much say very similar things that I said, but it's just like my attitude is different. So like back then I was like saying Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, like things I would never say today. I was so pretentious. I was still in that film critic snobby bubble that I was kind of coming off of with being in the Oscar race and like, becoming more of who I am and who I really am and kind of putting aside that pretentiousness. But
you see,
yeah, it's just so funny.
I'm going to say, I've probably said this on one of your episodes before, but I'll say it again. I think The Exorcist is overrated.
I kind of do too.
Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah. All right, so favorite character from any of the Scream movies? Obviously mine's Sydney in Scream 3.
Okay, Sydney is my favorite character overall, period. But I'm going to go with someone different because, I would always say like Sydney and Gail. But now with the 6 films released, I'm sorry, I'm going to say Sam Carpenter.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Amar, there's track 6 on Taylor Swift's new album, Life of the Showgirls, called Ruin the Friendship. And just teasing.
Yeah, so that's why I said let's push Gail and Sydney to the side for now, because that's too obvious, right? So yeah, Sam Carpenter, definitely.
All right. So here's a question that was sent in. They asked us, do you think, it is so crazy to be even putting these words out there right now, but do you think Scream 2022 will be as good as Scream 1 and 2? And in my answer to this, because as I was listening to this, of course, given my I've had it, right, I emotionally reacted and I was like, how dare they not include Scream 3? And I literally said that.
Yeah.
Like, you answer, like you gave your answer, and then I was like, well, you should be talking about all 3 of the original trilogy. I was just like, well, again, it's funny how much we change and we don't change. We are, so, and it's just so crazy to me that anybody. It's like, but this was part of the culture back then. People wanted Scream 5 to be this, to be as good as Scream 1 and 2. And it just isn't. I'm sorry. It's not of that quality. But so let's look at it this way. Do we think Scream 7 could be as good as the original trilogy?
No,
You don't think so?
No, I think it will be good. I just think it'll be, and I said this before, it will be below the trilogy for me, I reckon.
And it's so funny how much we change and we don't change. I'm going to say exactly what I said back then. I'm going to say, yes, I think it's going to be. I think it really is going to be as good as the original trilogy. I think it could break into the original trilogy, but let's just say Scream 7 comes out and it's not as good as the original trilogy. I would never say this about another Scream movie again. I would just say it's always going to be the trilogy and that's it.
Well, let's do these questions when Scream 8's about to come out. We'll see.
Well, leading into that, so this next question was about Scream 6. Okay, so it was, who do you want the opening kill to be in Scream 6? Do you remember who you said?
No, I really don't.
And it's kind of ironic. Oh my God, I just realized this. Your answer was Margot Robbie.
Okay, well,
but
Samara Weaving is basically Margot Robbie. So
there's a joke about Margot Robbie and Samara Weaving looking similar, having a similar voice, and basically being like doppelgangers of each other. How funny is that?
That is funny. And you know what I think about Samara Weaving's Scream. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going Scream 8 with this now, right? Okay, so who do I want to be the opening kill in Scream 8? I want it to be someone popular, like that's been around for a long time, maybe someone that's almost like royalty. But I'm going to go with, I don't know, let's just do Salma Hayek. Why not? She'll never be in it, but Salma Hayek. I love Salma Hayek. Or Jordana Brewster.
There you go.
Let's go with that one.
It.
Jordana Brewster.
You know who I want? I would like it to be someone older. This surprises nobody. My producer TJ is going to be like, of course, Ryan C. Showers wants to go with a 50-year-old woman. Yes, I do, TJ. And so my answer back then was Jamie Lee Curtis, which again, I am that basic bitch. I think Jamie Lee Curtis should be the opening kill in, or even Ghostface in Scream 9. I think that's what I want. I would love to see someone really famous, but also someone who's a veteran. Someone maybe who has ties to Kevin Williamson, like Jordana Brewster does with The Faculty. Whether that's someone from Dawson's Creek, whether that is, someone like Vera Farmiga, who is a very veteran person who's in horror but has never done a slasher. That's really cool. I don't know, someone like that. I want someone who has the weight. Also, a dream casting of mine would be having Michelle Pfeiffer be in a Scream movie. I think she could be like Mark's mother or like Ghostface.
So for her to be in a Scream film would literally be a dream casting. But I'm just going to jump onto an actress that I've mentioned a few times and has ties with Kevin Williamson, I believe, is an actress.
Vampire Diaries.
Vampire Diaries, yes. Nina Dobrev. I really don't think she has been given her due. She has played 4 or 5 different characters in Vampire Diaries. She can switch it up like any person that I've ever known, and she would be an absolute delight to be in a Scream film, I think.
Love it. Again, how much we change and how much specifically we don't change.
Yep.
So the next question that was sent in, would you be Sydney's friend or would you stay clear of her if you knew her in real life?
Really? The person that I am, I would be her friend. I really would.
Yeah.
I would. I attract all of this kind of drama and danger in my real life. So you know that, Ryan. People don't know half of my life, but you know it all. But no, the person that I am, I would, especially if she was my friend, I would probably get killed because of her, because I'm trying to protect her. So, but I would do that all day, every day.
Yeah, and honestly, I would be friends with her too. I would love the drama of like, ooh, this is a survivor and she's being attacked again. I'm going to insert myself into the situation. So
it's so different. You're going to do it on purpose, and I'm there trying to protect her. We would be a good trio, I think.
I would love it. I would be like, Sydney, I'm here for you. That would be my vibe. I would get off on that. I'd be like, Sydney, I'm here for you. Okay.
Jeez.
Okay. It was interesting. We were asked about LGBT representation in Scream 5 and if we would see any. And the answer was yes, we got that with Mindy. But for me, we're there. I think that we have that with Mindy, and I'm happy with that and satisfied.
We're definitely there.
Including the director, Kevin Williamson, who is a gay man. So we have that. So there you go. Sydney and Neil. This is interesting because, he allegedly died before the events of Scream 4. He wasn't mentioned in 5 and obviously not 6. Do you think we'll get a confirmation of whether he is dead or not in Scream 7?
I do actually, because now knowing that it's including her family and her daughter, there has to be a mention of maybe even Maureen and Neil, because, Grandpa will be brought up and we assume that he is dead. So.
Yeah. I hope that there is, and I think that like it would be nice just to have closure to Neil. I don't, because like otherwise the question still remains, and like I don't even know what that actor is up to these days. But it would be nice to know whether if he did die before the events of Scream 4 and how that affects Sydney's view of family. So the next question was, do you think that the Ghostface will be a background person from a previous movie that is pulling the strings?
No, I
Yeah.
hope not. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I've heard a lot of fans, well, even in the Patreon, speak of stuff like that. But no, I just don't want it to be. I just want it to be someone new that's new to this story that we're being told now.
Yeah, I think freshness is going to be key to Scream 7. The more that we retread, the worse that it's going to be. So I think fresh, do your own thing. That's my opinion. All right, last question from the fans was, if you could change one thing from any of the Scream films, what would it be?
I would take away all the illogical moments. I just can't deal with them. And I know you and I have discussed this at length, but I will even go back to Scream 2 with the car scene. Like, there's no chance he would have got around them too. So things like that. I mean, it's not so bad, but, all of them, unfortunately, every single one of them will have that. And I get it works at the time, but, having a ghost face in a supermarket when there's like going to be a curfew that evening, it makes no sense at all.
So for me back then, I talked about the fax machine in Scream 3. That's not my answer today. My answer today is, of course, fixing Gale in Scream 6. There's so much you could change with 5 and 6, but I can live with most things in Scream 5. I would maybe change Dewey being a drunk in Scream 5. But like the thing that absolutely hurts for me to even sit here with it is Gale in Scream 6, the ending of Gale in Scream 6, the character assassination of Gale in Scream 6. Besides, if she didn't have such an action-packed great scene, and if Courtney Cox wasn't so great at playing her, I think people would see just how pathetic Gale is in Scream 6. And I really I
have to agree with you. I have to agree with you because we've spoken about this at length, and I think they've betrayed Gale's character in 6. She's kind of just gone backwards, with who she was, especially with the events of 5. I do have a quick question for you though. Why would you change Dewey as a drunk? Because we don't really see him as a drunk. Yeah, he looks like he's a drunk, but having seen things in my own life and people around me, I actually think that's true too. He loves her so much that, he that's his coping mechanism. So I think that's quite true to character.
Well, see, and the thing is, I always believed that. And I guess I've just been challenged recently because David Arquette said that he wishes that Dewey wouldn't have been portrayed in such a negative light and then killed. And I get that. I get like feeling like, the Dewey fans out there, I think why they're more upset about the fact that like how disrespectfully it feels for their favorite character to be killed off at their lowest point, as opposed to seeing him be a drunk and growing and coming back to his former self. I think that's what they wanted.
But do you not feel that that's grounded in reality at the same time? It's quite...
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm conflicted about it. I am.
Yeah, because, I get what you mean, but, Gale's speech itself kind of redeems all of that, telling him that you're many things, but you're not a coward. And the fact that he cries, it's not weakness that he's showing. You can see how much love he has for that woman, but he just couldn't be there. So to him, it's cowardice. But she realizes, no, you didn't like something and you left for whatever reason. Yes, you left in the middle of the night, and you've owned up to that. And the fact that he then redeems himself and goes back to being the Dewey that would always do what Dewey would always do, and that's save people, even though he doesn't know them. So I don't know. I think it was, I think David Arquette was upset that he died, which a lot of people are. But then again, if he didn't die, we would have been like, well, it took no risks. So
no, and I agree with you. I think it's really that is good writing. That is art. I think a lot of fans of Dewey just think that it was mean-spirited to put him in such a horrible position and not give him, not be able to see him triumph again. So, yeah. But at the same time, I don't know. It's a very complex discussion. I think actually we should have a group Zoom about this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So these are the questions that you posed to me. So we're going to go through them.
Yeah.
Sarah Darling or CeCe Cooper?
My answer has changed a little bit. Let me explain why. I will always pick CeCe Cooper only because it's Sarah Michelle Gellar. But when I put them side by side, there is nothing to CeCe Cooper, really. Sarah Michelle Gellar is, like you said, a spunky character. So I have to admit that much. As a character, Sarah Darling, I'll admit that much now. But obviously, I'm just biased towards CeCe Cooper.
Again, how much we change and how much we don't change. Amar has changed. He was always, he used to hate Sarah Darling. And like, I split the difference last time. I said CeCe Cooper, I love the fact that it's Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I think that it's a better scene in terms of horror.
100%.
But Sarah Darling, the conversation she has with Ghostface is objectively much more interesting and spunky, but CeCe Cooper has.
But I do think that the CeCe Cooper conversation is creepier, maybe because of the way it's directed or the setting. The line is, do you want to die tonight, CC? It's so iconic with the overly dramatic instrument that plays. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm splitting the difference. Actually, no, we're going to say Sarah Darling. Sorry, SMG. We're going with Jay McCarthy today. So, okay, Randy or Cotton?
Randy, any day. I know your love for Cotton. I've always been annoyed by that character. And I love Liev. He's a good actor. I just don't like the character.
And I'm going Cotton. So, it is what it is. I love the moral grayness of him, and I love him as a suspect. And, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So we diverge, Amar. Okay. So favorite phone call with the exception of Sydney. You can't pick any Sydney phone call.
Listen, I'm always gonna go CC Cooper. I love how, smart she is, or she doesn't give a shit sort of attitude. She's just fighting back, and then until he obviously freaks her out. Yeah, it's one that I remember the most outside of Sidney Prescott ones. And there probably are better ones out there, but for me, that one always sticks in my head. So I'm going to stick with CC Cooper Scream 2.
So I'm going to give some radio silence love here. I'm going to go with Judy. I think that phone call is so good. It's emotional. The way that Marley plays it, he's genuinely scary. I actually think the phone calls in Scream 5 are pretty good.
Yeah.
I forget that, but even though that Gail has her phone call, it's funny because when I think of Scream 6, I don't even think about Gail's scene. Gail's scene, in my opinion, is its own movie, and Scream 6 is just the blob of everything outside of that. And there are just no good phone calls in Scream 6 outside of Gail.
Yeah. If I didn't pick CC, it would have been Judy. Judy's is fantastic.
And so who is your favorite minor character?
I don't remember who I said. When you say minor character, is it someone that's hardly in, like Joel? Oh.
Yes, we both picked Joel last time.
Yeah, because Joel pops in my head. You know who I like? I don't know if he's a minor character, but I'm going to say Danny. Because, I just think that there's a guy who is like me. Like, he's understanding, he's in love, but he's not like, overtly like in her face sort of thing. He accepts what's going on. So I think he would have been an interesting character going forward.
I think it's a great choice because he is kind of a minor character. And like how I would define a minor character is somebody who we recognize as being a part of the movie, but who isn't involved in a big death scene, who doesn't die, and who isn't the killer. So I don't know. I think Danny's a great choice. We both picked Joel last time. The sorority sisters are great. Wallace is great for Scream 3, but I'm going to be Ryan C. Showers and pick Maureen Prescott because she is a minor character. We don't really ever get to spend time with her, but we know everything about her. So Last question. What don't you want to happen in Scream 5? That was the question. So what don't you want to happen in Scream 7?
Ooh, what don't I want to happen? Well, first of all, I don't want any it's never going to happen because I think we get closure all the time. But I don't want any kind of cliffhanger. I don't want anyone from the past coming back to be a killer, like we mentioned earlier. And I definitely don't want Gail Weathers to die. So, yeah, I've not really thought about this, obviously. But yeah, those are the three things that would pop in my head straight away.
So for me, what I don't want to happen in Scream 7, I don't want Tatum's Fen group to upstage Sydney and Gail. Like that, or Sydney's family. Like for me, it's paramount to have Sydney's family develops and like her role in that and the relationship between Sydney and Gail. It should go like those two, number 1 and number 2 priority. Number 3, Tatum's friend group. I don't need to see the Scream 5ification, the Scream 6ification of this movie.
I don't think that will happen. I think Kevin Williamson kind of knows what he's doing, and he's done all that before with the friend group. I mean, it happened in 1 and 4 and 5. And I really think that it will be a Sydney and maybe Tatum will be like second most screen time or third most screen time, and her friends will just be in the background.
So what we answered very similarly last time. I basically said that what I don't want to happen is I don't want the trio to have less than 10 minutes of screen time, and I wanted each of them to have between 15 and 20 minutes. I wanted Gail to have 15 and Sydney to have 20. And it's funny, neither of those things happened. It was somewhere in the middle because all the trio, they each have 12 minutes of screen time in Scream 5. So it's not the worst case scenario, but it wasn't the adequate scenario either. Yeah. So it's just interesting. So, okay, Amar, let's talk The Conjuring. Oh my God. So The Conjuring Last Rites. It's the last movie where Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson would play Ed and Lorraine Warren. This has been a massive franchise in the world of horror since 2013. It spawned its own Marvel-type universe where, you had the main storyline, but you also had side movies, spin-off movies like The Nun, Annabelle, whatever. This has been one of the most profitable franchises in history, and The Conjuring itself had a huge, massive, shocking box office result. So the first weekend, it scored an $84 million opening. That's like one of the biggest openings ever for a horror movie. As it stands now, it's already exceeded all of the Conjuring movies that have ever come out. So it's already the highest grossing movie in the franchise. So Amar, what are your thoughts on the box office result for The Conjuring?
When there's something I love, it doesn't matter what kind of genre. In fact, in general, when films come out and do well, I get happy. I'm like, good, because I understand how much work and effort goes in making these films and behind the scenes. So I was just so happy. I just wanted it to do really well, and I was blown away. I mean, you said 84 million, but worldwide it was 190 million. So that's excellent figures. I mean, I'm really thrilled for the franchise. I love it. Even the worst film in the franchise is still okay. So,
well, that's the thing. The Conjuring films are very watchable movies, even if they aren't great art. But I would still argue that they are. For me, I see this as a good thing for Scream 7 because when I see The Conjuring, I think you can put The Conjuring, Halloween, and Scream in the same bucket. They are franchises that have huge name recognition, IP, and they are part of the culture in a different way. They appeal to general audiences, but they're really well made. And not only that, but they have big name A-list actors attached to them. So for a long running time, you have Jamie Lee Curtis, you have Vera Farmiga, you have Courtney Cox, like these people who have been in most of the movies. And whenever they are in the movies, it makes them more special, right? And they bring a lot as long running characters. So I associate The Conjuring with Scream and Halloween in that same world. So I was so happy to see it do well, especially because, people, snobby people kind of look down on The Conjuring, right? And so to see it actually be accepted and embraced, and also just seeing people go to the movies for a horror movie, in the first week of September, that is fun. It's just so fun to see it be successful, and for this franchise and Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson's time in the franchise to end on a high note for them.
It's win-win. And what surprised me, I suppose, with the box office isn't the fact that it did well. It's the fact that people didn't really like The Devil Made Me Do It. So I just thought, where's it going to go? Are people going to turn up for it? And especially with some horror films over the summer not doing so well, like Megan 2 and a few others. So I was a bit nervous for it. Anything that I love, I get nervous for. And then when the box office results came out, I was like, come again? This can't be true. And it was huge. So like you said, I'm hoping that it will give a boost to Scream 7 at least.
Well, I think it's not that like they are directly related. It's just the fact that if The Conjuring does this level of good, Scream 7, the groundwork is laid. We have an example that Scream 7 can do the Scream equivalent. It's not going to be the same exact thing, but it will be proportionate to what Scream can do. If The Conjuring can make 84 million domestic opening, the Scream 7 can easily make 50 million, I think.
Yeah.
This opening weekend.
Yeah, well, let's hope so.
So, and like that's the thing about this. Like my first question before we even talk about the movie is, another big horror movie this summer was a huge surprise. It was Weapons, right? It made tons of money. It was a small little independent film, and nobody really expected it to have this watershed moment, but it did. So what would you say you prefer? Do you prefer movies like Weapons that are kind of more artsy-fartsy, or do you prefer movies like The Conjuring or Halloween and Scream that are more popcorn-based with more bigger budgets and kind of better-known actors?
Well, I do prefer the latter, but
yeah, me too.
With Weapons, I have to give it credit for Sinners was another one, I guess, but they just came out there. They're not part of a franchise. They're independent films that are new with not huge actors. Obviously it has Josh Brolin and stuff in, but it was still very enjoyable. I really liked Weapons, but I would say that I'm a, like you say, a simple bitch. I prefer the whole popcorn stuff. I like the Scream world. I like the Conjuring world. I like stuff that's already part of a franchise, and I will go and watch them any day, every day.
I like things that are part of a long-running franchise. I like that coziness. I like that comfort. I like having really strong actors like Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson grounding and making these movies human. Because sometimes, like with avant-garde, artsy-fartsy, more independent like A24 movies, sometimes they alienate me because I don't feel like the actors bring the same level of humanity and relatability to those movies that you get when you watch Neve Campbell in 5 Scream movies, when you watch Vera Farmiga in 4 Conjuring movies. I know that we're not supposed to like the establishment. We're not supposed to like the corporate overlord, but there is something about The Conjuring and Scream and Halloween where it has the kinks worked out. It's approachable, and when you watch it, you just feel comforted by it, if that makes sense. While still, it gives you all the genre stuff that you want, and it gives you the razzle-dazzle of stars, of big movie stars. I like that.
But it's also the familiarity, because you know these characters, you've gone on that journey with them, so that really helps, especially in franchise. Obviously it's an obvious thing to say. Even when I was watching this new one, immediately when Vera's character comes on screen and Patrick Wilson, I was just like, oh, This is my comfort. I know these people.
Well, so where do you stand with The Conjuring overall? So what are your thoughts on the universe? And then what's the ranking of these 4 movies?
So the franchise for me is excellent for most part. I mean, there's films in there like The Nun and Annabelle and The Curse of La Llorona, which I actually didn't mind. I thought it was quite good for what it did. But I understand that these films aren't quite as great as The Conjuring, but they're still doing well. For me, if I had to put them in order, it would be 2, 1, 4, 3. And I know when you and I had a quick discussion, I put 1 first, but no, I've rewatched them and I thought, 2, 1.
Well, so I feel similarly. Like I didn't actually like get into The Conjuring until COVID, actually, because Brent loves The Conjuring. It's like his favorite franchise. He'll sit down and watch it without playing on his phone, which is insane to me. So but at the same time, I liked it. I was gravitated toward it. I love the spookiness of it. I like having Ed and Lorraine, and I like having a new case of the week. It's almost like a new Buffy case of the week, right? Or a new Buffy season. And I grew up Catholic, so all of the religious imagery, it does kind of like, it does spook me, a little bit. So that it makes it fun. And there is a little bit of an Exorcist vibe to it, a more commercialized vibe, of course. But so I like the style of the franchise. I like how scary it is again. And I like the fact that it built this universe and that we have the Nun and we have Annabelle. And we, for me though, the franchise really is about Ed and Lorraine. So this does really feel like the end in some respects. I will still see the nuns and the Annabelle as they come out, but this is like, for me, this is the heart of The Conjuring, just like Scream is like for is Sydney, right? So I changed my ranking of The Conjuring films since we spoke, and you're going to be upset, and it's shocking because I have been a defender of part 2 since I first saw it. I thought that it was easily superior to the original. We've just watched 1 and 2 back to back, and I'm going to say my ranking is 1, 4, 2, 3. So I feel like a Scream 4 person right now, being cutesy and putting 4 up front.
Well, that is surprising because, he convinced me what people don't know. Yeah, we were talking about it the other day and I was like, 1, 2, 4, 3. And he's like, well, no, 2's better. So I went back and watched them and I was like, oh, yeah, 2 is good, And then you put it third?
So here's the thing. So I watched 1 and 2 back to back. And here's the thing. I think 1 is a very tight movie in terms of the direction, in terms of the pace. I think so. I think the first movie is like an hour and 53 minutes, and then the second movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I feel the extra 20 minutes in watching The Conjuring 2. I think James Wan lets sequences, go on too long and not cutting it shorter. I think that having a more concise vision of 1. And if I would have just watched 2 by itself, maybe I wouldn't have felt this way, but I felt like, okay, get to the point, enough build up. And I also, a pet peeve of mine is when we spend too much time with the family and not proportionate with the Warrens. I think that sometimes Conjuring 2 gives us too much of the British family and not enough of the Warrens.
So it's because they're British. That's why you're putting them third, right?
I'm anti-British.
Yeah, I guess so. No, I get your point, but then, I can't wait to discuss this 4th one then, because I've written down pros and cons here on this list.
I do think that Conjuring 2 is Vera Farmiga's best performance. I think Lorraine gets a very unique set of scenes, lets her develop in a very cool way. I think that she is the reason I have always thought, you have the opening scene, you have the scene with the nun at the house, you have like her very emotional arc that we didn't see in the first one. So I love The Conjuring 2 for that, but I do think Conjuring 1 is such a tight movie.
I think that Vera Farmiga is a highlight of all 4 films. I think her character gets to do everything that you want a character to have, the juicy scenes and the creepy moments. And even with the third one, when she sees the witch, it's just fantastic. So yeah, Lorraine is by far the better of the 2 characters, or at least gets the juicier material.
Patrick Wilson is phenomenal, but Vera Farmiga, I think, is the soul of these movies. She gets to go into the hauntings because of who Lorraine was in a way that Patrick Wilson just doesn't. So but so there's that. Before we go into the new movie, quick thoughts on Conjuring 3, because this movie, we both ranked it last. A lot of people despise this movie. A lot of people think it's a betrayal. I don't see it that way. It is different in structure. You don't have like the parallel storylines. It's really just like the Warrens doing this murder mystery, and I like that. And I don't mind the switch up in the formula, but at the same time, I do think that it is just slightly weaker than the others, but I still love it. I think it's a great movie.
So, earlier on when we had that I've had it with, and I said critics, and I meant like letterbox people, this is exactly what I mean. So The Conjuring 1, obviously it was new, so everyone loved it. 2, people are like, okay, it's similar, but they switched up the scenery, so it's good. And then with part 3, they're like, oh yeah, it's too different. And then with part 4, they're like, oh, it's too similar to the first two. And I'm like, why are you guys never happy? I understand that 3 isn't as scary, or, it doesn't really go into the demonic world as such. It's more black magic and stuff and witches. But I like the fact that it's still those characters and they go deep into this additional story. I look at the Harry Potter films. They're not all the same. Prisoner of Azkaban takes it somewhere else. Order of the Phoenix takes it somewhere else. So they're all different, and they're praised for that because they're not the same as everything. So I just think that people hating on 3, yeah, it's fine to be the weakest, and I get why. It doesn't have as many stars as the others for me, but it's still a great film, and it has good characters and good moments in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like if I had to boil down what people could say is wrong with 3 is like the fact that they sacrifice so much of like the case of the week, the case of the movie. It's more of a legal drama because like what happens in the opening, and it's a fantastic opening, it doesn't allow for us to follow that character for another 90 minutes, unlike the other films.
But also, let's just take the fact that these are based on, whether it's fully or loosely, on real life incidents. Well, then we've got to follow that, because obviously all their cases weren't the same.
I do too. So here's the thing about 1 and 2, and this kind of contrasts to 4, and why people don't like 4, or people are softer on 4 than we are. Because Amar and I are both very, very positive on The Conjuring Last Rites. People have called this 4th movie generic compared to 1 and 2. And while I disagree with it as a criticism, I get where they're coming from, and it's because James Wan has a very cool way of setting up a shot and making things extra spooky, making the visuals extremely dark and grungy almost. Like there's something very dark about the way that James Wan approached the franchise as opposed to this new director. But that being said, I still think that it's a very effective movie with its scares. And just because it's not James Wan doesn't mean that it's as Amar would say, rubbish. So Amar, what are your thoughts on The Conjuring 4 and the accusation of being generic?
Again, you see, look,
He's had it.
I've had it because you can't win. And people are like, first of all, okay, the film for me is quite engaging, right? I find that we do have scares. Okay, it's not as scary as 1 and 2. I get that. But to me, at least one jump scare caught me so off guard. I mean, I was sat there, 2 children on the right, and this young lad on the left who brought his girlfriend. All the way through the film, he didn't jump. And one jump scare came, and all 4 of us jumped at the same time. So for me, it's effective in that sense. But I'm going to quickly go and mention 2 reviews. So my son, when we finished, he turned around and said to me, and I said to him, I said, what did you think? Because I was still, lingering on an 8 out of 10. And he turned to me and he goes, I enjoyed that more than Weapons. That's what he said. And he loved Weapons. And then a week later, I was speaking to my cousin, who's about 25. And he turned around and he said, that was one of the worst horror films I've ever seen. And I said, why? And he goes, well, the trailer advertises like it's a scary film, but it wasn't scary at all. And I said, well, it's not just about the scares. For me, and I said this to you, what the film does effectively is creep you out without the jump scares. And I'll mention a sequence in the basement when the mother is there with the washing machine and it switches off, and you can see a shadow in the corner. Now, normally scenes like that, it's the audience sees it, but the actors don't, or the characters don't. She sees it, and I held my breath. I was like, oh shit, something's going to happen here, right? To me, that's effective directing. Because there's no loud music. It's just stillness and darkness, and it allows your brain to do all the creepy thoughts and stuff. And I think it does that quite well throughout. So for me, I thought it was fun. Yes, my criticism with the film is that it is, you said about 2. I think this one is quite long as well. There are sequences that could have been shortened. And the only thing is that it has minimal jump scares in comparison to the first 2. But apart from that, I actually think it's a well-directed film, a well-acted film. Yes, it has that, like, the last act is very much in vein with 1 and 2, right? It's very similar, but then if they didn't do that way, people would complain. So for me, it's a good solid 8 out of 10.
Well, so, and here's the thing about the scares. I actually do think that there are quite a bit of jump scares. I think that like the Conjuring devices, like, the phone cord being pulled from the mom as she's on the phone, like those things, they are serviceable. They are good. They're solid. They're not groundbreaking. The atmosphere isn't dripping with the gothic darkness of James Wan, but Michael Chavez does an effective job at making it suspenseful. I think it's a very suspenseful movie. It just feels like classic. You have like the phone, you have the sequence with the TV and like the VHS and the pausing. You have like room where she's trying on the wedding dresses and the mirrors. That is spooky. That is well done,
Even the sequence I mentioned, and then the one with the pulling of the telephone cord, right? Well, I think what people wanted was for something to jump out. And then they would have said, yeah, that's scary. I don't believe so, because we know that it's not the children, right? So already before the character is aware, we're already starting to shit ourselves a little bit like, oof, we know that's not the character. This is somebody else pulling it. What if she goes close and switches on the light and somebody is there? All of that builds the tension, I believe. I thought it was well done. Yeah, you said it's not groundbreaking, but it's still effective, I think.
Well, and so here's the thing for me and why I love this movie and why I responded to it so well is Amar alluded to like the length, the fact that it's long. The reason why I criticize 2 and I don't criticize this is because I don't feel like the scenes drag. I think what they're doing with The Conjuring Last Rites is they're setting up and juicing this family and really like engaging with the domestic of the Warrens to give us a conclusion that feels like a conclusion. They withhold the Warrens from engaging with the darker elements of The Conjuring, with not doing the genre stuff, not doing the horror scenes. They give us drama scenes with them. They go into Ed's health. They go into the wedding. They go into the daughter. Judy is an integral part of this movie. So the first 2/3 of the movie with the Warrens, like there's a lot of scenes with the Warrens, but it's not really horror scenes. It's domestic drama scenes. And for me, I think you needed to do those scenes in order to make it feel like this is the last chapter, and for us to feel satisfied of like spending time with the characters and knowing the characters and understanding where they are in their lives and why they choose to do this in Act 3 and why it kind of just fits as an ending to the characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I like the fact that we do get a lot. I think that's what the criticism my cousin was trying to give was that it's not scary because it's just concentrating on family drama. But it's a case of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you don't give these characters enough scope. I mean, yeah, we've seen their journey throughout the films, but like you said, with it being the last film, we do need all of that. And I want to give a shout out to the girl that plays the daughter. Is it Judy? I think she was fantastic. I think her scene, like you said, the mirror scene was excellent. When the door opens and shuts, we know that it's not the lady that's come back, and that in itself then builds up the tension. But we need that drama. We need to understand why Lorraine is so protective of her daughter. And I also want to mention that it's one of the films where you don't really see the actual main demon. And I think it's all the better for it, because sometimes when something is lingering in the dark and it scares you. And then when it comes out, you're like, oh, well, it's not as scary as I thought. So I think they did really well not to show us anything, but just glimpses of fingers and stuff. But even with the family scenes, like when they're at the restaurant, how it switches up.
Excellent.
It's so good and so subtle. And then you see the finger. That took me a second to realize there were fingers over her shoulder.
Judy, who is we saw in the other movies, she becomes a fully fledged part of this story in a different way. And another reason why The Conjuring Last Rites really works for me is because they make this final chapter and not only are the Warrens there as the demon spirit horror spooky specialists, right, to kind of to work with the demon and get the demon out of the house, right? That's not their only role. The story is inextricably linked with the Warrens. It goes back to their early days as a couple doing this sort of thing. It's about their personal story. It's about the story of when Lorraine was giving birth to Judy. And they use the mirror, they linked this mirror with the Warrens back then to the current family in Pittsburgh. Intertwining that, I think, was the smartest thing that they could have done. And again, it makes it feel like the final act. It makes it feel like we are at a conclusion. We're at a tipping point, like having such intimacy and interlocking of, the Warren story with this new story, with this new family. That to me was the key and the magic of this movie.
I have to give that credit because obviously if you look at the 3 films that come before it, they're just cases of the week, like you say. This one actually comes full circle. And
because it's about them and their family.
Yeah, it's the start and the ending of potentially, well, it is the same demon. And, and it shows the vulnerability. It also shows Lorraine as an actual mother. It shows, and I think that the interaction even between him, Ed Warren, and Judy's fiance is very real as well. And I think that's what people are complaining about, that why are you bringing in family drama into a horror film? And yet, if you don't have that, then how do you have an actual story? It's just nothing but scares that mean nothing, right? So I have to agree with you in the sense that the whole Warren story is fantastically done. Coming full circle is genius, and giving Judy more screen time it's not like passing the torch, but it kind of is at the same time. Be like, well, I have this power and now you have this power. And what I love about the whole thing is that all the way through the film, Lorraine says to her daughter, you need to push it out, push it out, push it out. And in the end, she realizes that isn't going to work. I need you to embrace this. And I thought it was quite powerful in why she says that. And she realizes this is the only way we're going to defeat this. And that then shows that she is still human at the end of the day. She thinks she can control everything, but she can't. So she realizes, no, let's go and let's fight this together, and we need to change tactics. And that's a sign of a great character. And again, Vera Farmiga is just literally flawless in everything. It's nuance, isn't it? You know I love nuance, right? And it's just like when, for example, they're in a scene, there's no music, but everything seems to calm down all of a sudden, and she just turns her head. And that there for me is just like, wow, you're in that moment with that character.
It's magic, and it feels like everything that you're saying, it feels climactic, like making Judy a central part of the story. Seeing her grow up over 1, 2, and 3, it makes it feel earned. It makes it feel like we've arrived at a destination. Making the Warrens, in their origin story, essentially, the center of the ending of their story is beautiful. It's emotional. The opening is very well done. And can we just point out, the actors they hired as the young Ed and young Lorraine,
My God,
couldn't have been better.
There was a point where I looked at the young Ed and I was like, that's Patrick Wilson with CGI on. Like, literally, that's how much he looked like him.
Exactly. And I just think, kind of like Scream, it's always been about family. It's about Sidney Prescott's family. Even before this new Scream 7, it's about her backstory. It's about her mother. And, kind of like The Conjuring, I think The Conjuring is similar about Ed and Lorraine and their marriage. That's really the heart of these movies, even if they are doing a Demon of the Week, at the end of the day, it's about the two of them and their connection. And I think that's what The Conjuring Last Rites gets completely correct about focusing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it really does. It really does. And I just want to quickly go back to the fact that people are saying that, it's not a scary film or it's very run-of-the-mill type of Conjuring film. Well, yeah, it is. It has to be run-of-the-mill, because that's the formula it needs to take to get to where it needs to get to. But at the same time, what they do is then they bring in these other elements, which is the family. I must say that I don't mind the first two concentrating so much on the actual families, but I do appreciate that they give the Warrens a lot more screen time. Yeah. But for me, it's a welcome addition to this family, this whole universe. Like you said, it's the new horror Marvel universe of films. And I do hope that we get, a new Nun or a new Annabelle. If there is another Conjuring film, I'm not going to say no to that. But it's one that I can't wait to add to my collection, put it that way.
I agree. If my criticism of 2 is that they spend too much time with the British family and not enough time with the Warrens, I think here, I don't mind that the Pittsburgh family is a bit more generic and a bit vaguer. I don't really care about them. I'm here for the Warrens. So I think sacrificing a bit of development for them for the Warrens was absolutely the right decision.
But I don't think they do sacrifice, because I honestly believe that we get enough to understand what each character represents. Yes. I mean, that scene with the VHS playing, right? And she pauses it. When that ghoul finally comes out, I literally felt my skin crawl. And I was like, wow. And we don't get that at the beginning, so it builds tension. When we finally get it, it takes a while for it to happen. And it keeps going and going and going. You're like, ooh, someone's going to pop out. Someone's going to pop out. And it doesn't. You think, okay, so you calm down, and then bang, it hits you with it. So people complaining that, oh, James Wan should have come back. I think the director does a very good job.
He does it. He does. Do I think it's as creepy as 1 and 2? No. But do I think that it makes up for it in other areas, like the sentimentality and fulfilling the Warrens, potential? Absolutely. And I can't stress enough, linking the Warrens' origin story and the fact that the Warrens are haunted by this thing and tying it to the new family, that was so genius to me. And I'm so happy that was the decision that they made, as opposed to just giving them another Conjuring 1 or 2 where it's just the case of the week. So Amar, where can they find you online?
Online, you can find me on X, which is formerly known as Twitter, at Amar Karim, all one word, or on Instagram, which is Amar Ali Karim, all one word.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next segment of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for this little extended review of The Conjuring. I'm sitting here with one of my favorite people and somebody who, on air, I promised could review The Conjuring with me back in May or June. So everybody, please welcome Anthony DiPuzzo. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Ryan. How's it going? I'm so happy to be back to talk about The Conjuring.
Well, so Anthony, tell me where you stand with the franchise overall, and what is your ranking of the 4 movies now?
Yeah, okay. So I actually really adore this franchise. Listen, I think the first 2, spoiler, James Wan, they're the best ones. I think that the franchise overall gets hate because it is your super mainstream Friday night, jump scare horror fest, and some people don't like that, or they just say they hate it online because it's the cool thing to do with the hardcore, horror people. But I think that at its worst, they're all watchable for like a Friday night watch, and at its best, they're like we have a modern horror classic with the OG. I do think that this one doesn't touch the heights of the OG, so I would say my ranking is The Conjuring, the OG, and then I would go The Conjuring 2. And then I would go The Conjuring Last Rites, and then I would go, a little space and The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It. But I don't hate any of the franchise, even the spin-offs. I think they're all like at least watchable and fun.
I think like the movies with Vera and Patrick, they are a bit above the spin-offs. And I just really love them as figures. It reminds me of like their star power. What they bring to The Conjuring reminds me of what Jamie Lee brings to Halloween and what Nev and Courtney bring to Scream. What are your thoughts?
I 100% agree. I think, like I've said after I saw this one, because it really does focus on them, which I think is important. I think they're the backbone of the entire universe, and it's very fitting that this movie took the time, and that's why it's over 2 hours, so we can spend some time with them, because we needed them to have a great send-off, because they are the reason why, in my opinion, this franchise is so successful. They hold it all together.
I'm really, really liking Conjuring 4. Like, I'm really moved by it. And my favorite thing about it is the interlocking of the Warrens and their origin story and their family unit with the case of the week. I think that was an incredibly smart thing to do to have a final outing for Patrick and Vera.
I 100% agree. I think it's balanced pretty well. We don't get them straight off to helping the family. And again, when you're doing a movie that's the last rites, the last installment for them, I had no issues with. I see a lot of people online saying, "Why are we with the Warrens? We're going to get to the horror goodness." I'm like, there's enough creepiness and enough, fun set pieces, funhouse set pieces. I actually had a really good time with them, spread out enough where I'm almost just as engaged when I'm just watching them have a barbecue at their house and just spending time with them, because again, that's why some of these horror movies are my favorites, because the character development is so important to me. And I think that it was fitting once they ended up going to help the family together, because then they have the whole thing going on with their daughter, how they really had to come together at the end. Again, The Conjuring has always been a cheesy, warm hug, so I've never understood the complaints, and I always knew that they were going to play it safe with this one, but I kind of wanted that because I wanted my warm hug of an ending for that couple.
Well, and you got it. And so specifically, it's always interesting, right, to look at how franchises are going to end their main storyline, right? You have the Scream 3 of it all. You have like maybe like Halloween H2O. You have Halloween Ends, and you have The Conjuring Last Rites now, where the daughter does. Oh, so spoilers. Judy does get married, and the epilogue per se, and how we know they get a firm happy ending, is this Lorraine telling Ed about their future that she had a vision of. And we get to see it play out. So what did you think of that as the epilogue?
I thought it was adorable. It was sweet, and again, it felt like a hug, and it was touching. I think that what Michael Chavez, this is his best, I think, directed movie in the Conjuring universe. And I think what he really took from James Wan is not only how to finally really stage a good set piece, but how it's always important to bring it back to Ed and Lorraine. I mean, you have those warm moments in the first one. My favorite Ed and Lorraine moment of the entire franchise is in part 2, when she's just watching Ed, sing Elvis. And then in the end, they dance to that. And that to me was so touching. And then he really takes that and he runs with it in this ending. We get the whole, for franchise fans, we get the Easter eggs of the past characters, which gave me chills. And then you get Patrick and Vera doing their thing. Like, they are like my second favorite horror couple, Gail and Dewey, and they really go for it with this. So I think that he really directed their ending well. And it I used to think, I'm like, there's no way they're not going to bring it back to them in 2 years when this makes a bunch of money. But he really made it feel final for them. Whereas maybe in 10 years, they'll come up for a quick cameo or a return. For the time being, their story is definitely over with, and we'll definitely continue with the spin-offs. But I really like how he made it feel final. We got their ultimate happy ending.
Yeah. Another piece of the finale climactic pie that I haven't seen people talking about is Father Gordon's death. I think that was such a great device for the movie, because we've been with him from the beginning. And I think that it's executed really well. I think it's used well. And I think I was actually impressed by how much they kept the Warrens out of the spooky shit. They really focused in the way that Halloween Ends for that first half hour does everything without Michael. That is what happens here with The Conjuring, with Ed and Lorraine, in terms of no spooky shit for the first full 2 acts until Father Gordon dies. So I think having that as the reason that they that they really come back, and the fact that Judy is seeking it out, I think it makes their choice to do this final case really important and really significant. And I believe it. What are your
And
thoughts?
it makes it way more personal to
Yeah.
them. They're not just going to help these people because that's their job. We find out in the beginning, they're really done with that life.
Yeah.
They want to just have a nice family, wholesome life, but they feel forced to come back because they lost him and because their daughter wants to help so bad and then she's in peril. So it's almost like more personal to them. And I think that was the great way to go with the final installment, that they don't want to be involved with this stuff, but they need to be. So it's not just because they're good people. I mean, we know in real life, sketchy stories about them, but Patrick and Vera, we love them in the in-universe. They're amazing people, but they're not just doing it because they're good people. They're doing it to save their family.
Right. What did you think of, speaking of their family, right? So what did you think of Judy and how she was executed in the story?
I thought she did great. I thought she was very, very well cast, and she did a great job. I was a little bummed that they didn't bring the OG Judy back, 'cause I feel like if that was that actress, I'd be like, damn, like I'm missing
Yeah.
out on this horror blockbuster. I felt bad, but once I saw her, I get they aged her up, and she's engaged to be married. I really loved the relationship she had with Ed and Lorraine. I liked the sequence where she's trying on her wedding dress. That was cool. And I think in the finale she did really good. I mean, again, we have generic possession horror stuff, but she brought her A game in the end. I thought she had some creepy movements, some creepy scenes, and I wouldn't be mad if the franchise was handed off to her
Oh, I
going
didn't think
forward.
about that. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like that. And specifically with Lorraine, I don't know. Is this just my Scream obsessed rotted braid that like during the finale, like, there are moments after they save her where it's just like, Lorraine and Judy, like their faces side by side in the same frame, kind of going through all of this. I got Sydney and Tatum vibes, and we haven't even met Tatum yet. And yet just the anticipation that I felt like, ooh, this is giving Sydney and Tatum.
That's how you know we're so amped for our return of our final girl. But I think this is a good sign of things to come too, just to always bring it back to Scream. I mean, we have these, I would say they are the faces of the franchise, Ed and Lorraine, coming
Mhm.
back front and center. And the movie killed it. I mean, I guess people are divisive on it because it is a Conjuring movie and people think it's cheesy, generic fun. But again, I thought that was the charm of it, that it has the funhouse scares, but it really meant something emotional. And I'm really hoping that Scream means something emotional and we really get that good character development with Sydney and her daughter and Gail and crew. And I hope that Scream 7 really blows the roof off the box. It's not going to do Conjuring numbers because Conjuring is the most mainstream
Yeah.
franchise and it does really well overseas where slashers don't do as well overseas. But I mean, I'm hoping we can get a $50 million opening weekend for Scream 7. And I hope this is an indication of that.
Right. Like, so The Conjuring, so I would love your perspective on this. Why is it so mainstream? There's a difference between a slasher versus, I guess, ghost stories, cloaked in religion. I don't know. Why do you think The Conjuring is broadly appealing as it is?
I think that overseas, the ghost stories and the supernatural, they are more affected by that. So
Mhm.
that really brings them in to the theater way more. And you could see that literally if you look at even Halloween 2018, highest grossing slasher, but the overseas numbers weren't as high as the domestic numbers. And
Right.
same with Scream. They do well overseas, but it's not like Conjuring is doing blockbuster levels overseas, like literally doing better than superhero movies. And I would say as far as like in the States, I just think The Conjuring is, I know Scream and Halloween, like Scream specifically, it is a slasher blockbuster, but I think something about The Conjuring is more four quadrant where this could be the first horror movie you take your whatever 8, 10-year-old kid to. You can go with a date, you can go with your parents, you can go with your family, whereas Scream is still violent and it is super slashery, whereas this one I feel like could be like, an R-rated Goosebumps if you really look at it this way. It's an R-rated It Funhouse type horror movie, which is
Mhm.
why I really think they succeed. Even though it's rated R, it's gateway horror. So that's why I think families and everyone, you can go by yourself. You can go with, like I said, you can go with a spouse, a grandma, a grandparent. No one's going to be really afraid to bring everyone to go see this movie. Whereas Scream, we're still talking about, some violent situations. And, we dealt with, especially in Scream 3, some hardcore, sexual abuse. And, so there's kind of a theme in Scream that's a little more adult and intense than The Conjuring, I would say, even though they both are blockbuster franchises for their, respective subgenres.
What did you think about the opening? And
I really, really enjoyed the opening. Again, the casting director killed it with casting young Patrick. I say young Patrick, young Ed and Lorraine. I think that the actor, he like literally looked like a young Patrick Wilson, and the actress, she killed it too. I really got Patrick and Vera vibes, and I thought it was very touching because obviously we know that Judy's not dead, doesn't die because we've seen the other installments, but I thought it was again a touching way to bring in their religious beliefs and power and just make it it almost felt like this one did feel I appreciate that it did feel a little darker because you had that minute like, "Oh my god, the baby's gone," and you had the moment with the priest where you actually see him, hang himself. So I
Yeah.
think that it did go darker than other installments with the violence, but
Mhm.
I really enjoyed the opening to kick it off, and I'm happy that they didn't just de-age them or do some AI shit. I really think it was smart that they brought it back to that, and especially when you're doing a movie that is really based around the daughter more than
Mhm.
anything else, that was an important way to start it.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the darkness of the movie because some people have said that it feels tamer or more generic
I'm gonna
than
agree with that.
James Wan's movies. I mean, I think James Wan had such a unique style that has like that just drips in like texture, and I do think that Chavez has a different approach, but I don't think that I think that it's very dismissive and even snobby and arrogant to say it like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a lazy just critique of a movie because they want an excuse to hate on it because it isn't like Terrifier or whatever, and it's not supposed to be. They don't want it to be. And I agree. I think the violence is on par with the first. There's actually a couple of sequences in this one that actually go a little bit further. I love the ending when the fiance, he's getting literally like his leg is getting scraped. I don't know if I think it's his leg is getting literally like scraped off by the mirror. Again, the priest scene. We have some actual death sequences in this movie. So I think that it's on par with the first two. I do think that this is the most. I think Michael Chavez is doing his best James Wan with this one.
That's a good way to put it. So, well, Anthony, what do you give this out of 10?
I really dug this one. I would go like in between 7.5 and 8. I'm going with an 8. I really 7.8, 8 around there. I think it's a really, really well done movie.
Okay, well, I mean, it's eights across the board here at Scream with Ryan C. Showers. Ryan, Amar, and Anthony all
Oh, awesome.
have 8 out of 10, which is fun. All right, well, Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah, you guys can find me and my buddy's podcast at Never Split Up Podcast, all social media. Subscribe to our YouTube, and I'm just Anthony DePuzzo on X. Come hit me up.
All right, thanks, Anthony. Hello, everybody. I know this has been a long episode, but we are going to round off this episode with a little discussion about Taylor Swift and the season of fall because there is a correlation. I don't know why. So, to help me answer this quandary, I've invited my friend Ashley. Hey, Ashley.
Hello, Ryan. Hello, everybody. I am your Taylor Swift encyclopedia.
Okay, like, Taylor Swift, her songs, sometimes her entity of a self, sometimes gets linked to the season of fall/autumn. So what are your thoughts on the correlation between Taylor and autumn, and why do we come to that?
I feel like fall is it's my personal favorite season. And I feel like it's girlhood like, in a season. I feel like there's this really powerful like change taking place and it's so beautiful. Like to me, fall is like one of the most beautiful seasons. Everything looks so crisp and lovely. And there's a lot of change there. But I do think it is just kind of based in when a lot of her albums would come out. And then Red is just, it's so a fall album. Like the imagery was fall. And then have you heard of the Tumblr post that she wrote about fall?
No.
Okay, so she wrote a Tumblr post way back when. She wrote a Tumblr post and then she she like made it so it's like so she says like it's literally her talking about why she loves fall and it's like in hats and scarves and knee socks and wearing tights the first time in months when the mornings are chilly and you can see your breath and draw little pictures on foggy windows and plaid stuff and ankle boots and pumpkin flavored stuff because you love it and it's like all of like she's just talking about why she loves fall and after that it just kind of spiraled. I think there's there's things like Gilmore Girls has become like a fall show, even though that show is like takes place through all seasons. It's one of my all-time favorite shows.
Right.
So I do know that for a fact that it is takes place in all of the seasons. But it is such a fall feeling show, and Taylor Swift has that same feeling. So like if you've never watched either of those or listened to Taylor or watched Gilmore Girls, I don't know really how to explain it except for that. Or that feeling of like right before Halloween's coming and you're just like ready for like the spooky vibes. There's like fall girlies and spooky girlies, and I am one of both. But I feel like most of us like are intertwined. It's like wanting to watch Hocus Pocus and sit on the couch and eat popcorn and just like the homebody of it all. Like you're allowed to be at home for the first time for a while because like in spring and summer you're supposed to be outside and in fall you're like, heck yeah, I can like stay at home and no one can judge me because it's getting colder and just read my book or whatever it is. And I love fall fashion, same as her. I'm a Canadian girl who loves plaid and I love wearing toques or beanies, whatever y'all want to call them, and mitts and I love boots. Those are my favorite things. And I love pumpkin spice, guys. I love it. And so I am just always excited for fall. I love it so much. And I think Taylor is just like a basic girl. Like she's just like, I just love fall. Okay. And all of us are like, yes, thank you so much. Us too. We love fall. I just feel like girls love fall, and Taylor is a girl.
Well, so it's funny that you say that because like I feel like the Swiftie starter pack could include pumpkin spice. And like, sometimes like I think that like if we could laugh at ourselves, like I think like part of like the Taylor Swift aesthetic and being a Swiftie is like basic white girl, but in the best way possible. Fall plays into that, and Gilmore Girls plays into that too. And it's just so funny because my two favorite albums of Taylor Swift are literally Red and Evermore, which are the two fall albums. But like it's like there's seasonal imagery in both of those albums, in the actual songs and like in the album covers, and like specifically like in the music videos for Red and All Too Well. I mean, that All Too Well literally is like a fall foliage explosion. There's leaves, and it's like, and I don't know, it's just like also just the idea of like Red and Evermore. You could take this even further. Like Red is about like going through something and coming out on the other side of something, and fall is kind of like that because you go through this physical change and then you're in winter. You go from summer to winter. And even like Evermore, it's about the end of something and in the death of something to start something new. And that's literally what happens in the fall with all the trees dying and the leaves falling off. So I don't know. I think that there is definitely a tie between Taylor Swift and fall. Whatever I think of Taylor, I know like a lot of people associate like 1989 with summer, right? I think that you can associate like the debut album with spring. I think that there are seasonal connections, but for some reason, fall just hits harder, kind of like you said with Gilmore Girls and fall, like the coziness of it. And because her albums did come out in the fall. Like I have such vivid memories of like walking in the fall foliage and even in the snow in November, listening to Red Taylor's version back before I was a real Swiftie, so it's just interesting.
I know. So I love fall, and I feel like it's just like this cozy, and like I am proud to say I am basic. I am happy to be basic. I am happy to be like all the other girls in the world, because I think all the other girls in the world are awesome, and to be compared to any one of them is a compliment in my opinion. So I'm a basic girl, and I love fall. Guys, go get yourself something pumpkin spice, but I don't like pumpkin pie. I'm sorry.
All right, Ash, tell everybody where they can find you online.
You can find me at SquirrelandSpud9 on Instagram. There you will find my love for fall, Taylor Swift. Squirrels and fall, y'all. They go together. Acorns. And you'll find the Scream Game of the Week, where Ryan and I make some sort of puzzle or some interactive Scream-related game that you can comment and try to see if you can guess the right answer. Or sometimes it's just a would you rather. Where would you rather sit, or who would you rather go for lunch with, or something like that. So please always participate and play, because I love to see your answers.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back!